Welcome to the BBC's Global News Podcast on YouTube. Hello, I'm Jenna Jalil. And today we're looking specifically at what Israel wants from the war with Iran. We're joined from Jerusalem by our correspondent, John Donnison. And John, what do you think, as far as you can assess it, is Israel's end goal with this war in Iran?
Well, if we go on what they've been saying, they want regime change. They want a non-Islamic regime in charge of Iran, and they want the kind of people we saw in those protests rising up at the start of the year across Iran, protests that were battered down by the Iranian authorities. They want those people to rise up again. But I have heard other people, Israeli analysts, saying what would actually suit Israel quite well is just a sort of failed state in Iran. So they're not that bothered about having a stable new regime there. This particular analyst I was listening to, a former negotiator on behalf of the Israelis in the Israel-Palestinian negotiations over the years. I mean, he was saying Israel or Prime Minister Netanyahu would be happy if you had Iran turn into a country like Iraq or Libya or Somalia, where it was really not functioning, it no longer posed a threat, and it would also absorb a lot of kind of effort and energy in from all those Arab neighbours around it, and that would suit the Israelis quite well. That's not what the Israeli government is saying, that's not their line. They just say we want a new non-threatening regime in power in Iran, but there's no sign that is going to happen anytime soon.
Is Israel on the same page as the US?
I think broadly, yes. I mean, they've certainly done their very best over the course of this short war to appear to be in complete lockstep on what their aims are and strategy. I mean, Prime Minister Netanyahu has said from the very start of this war, and frankly, he's been saying it for the best part of 40 years, that Iran poses an existential threat to Israel. He's been saying for 40 years that Iran is just a few steps, a few months, a few years away from getting a nuclear weapon, and he has been determined to stop that. And this time he has gone in with greater force really than ever before, and with the full backing of the United States. And certainly militarily, they do seem to be ticking off a lot of their objectives.
Donald Trump, it seems, wants a short, low-cost war. Benjamin Netanyahu wants to destroy the Iranian regime. It's a long-held dream of his.
Yeah, well, they've both said they want to topple the regime in Iran. Donald Trump said that at the start of the war. Now, you're not going to do that by airstrikes alone. You would need boots on the ground. I don't think we're going to see that. So they are hoping that the Iranian people rise up and topple the regime. And that is something that both men said at the beginning of the conflict, that it was a sort of once-in-a-generation opportunity for Iranians to do that. But there is no sign of that happening at the moment. And there are some analysts who say, well, look, the war has actually galvanized support around the current regime in Iran. So, yes, Donald Trump is clearly signaling at the moment, given the sort of chaos in the financial markets we've had, the fact that he's got these midterm elections coming up in the United States in November, the fact that basically he came into office pledging to get America out of wars. He's now got involved in a massive one in the Middle East. So the things he's saying are suggesting this war could end any day now. And I think, frankly, even if that's not what the Israelis want, they will go along with that because they want to appear to be in complete lockstep with the Americans. And they can say, well, look, we've set Iran's nuclear program back a long time. We've destroyed a lot of Iran's ballistic missile capability. But you have to remember, it was only a year ago when we had that 12-day war between the United States, Israel and Iran. And I remember President Trump saying at the time that they had obliterated Iran's nuclear program. A few months later, we were back with Prime Minister Netanyahu saying Iran still remained a threat. They were rebuilding the nuclear program. And a year later, we were back at war.
Even if the war in Iran ends, do you think the war in Lebanon will continue? And could there be a major Israeli ground invasion?
We've had ministers just today saying that they think that the Israeli military should push further north and occupy much of southern Lebanon. Now that would require a lot of troops to go in. We saw tanks massing on the border when we were up there. They haven't gone in the kind of numbers, the kind of force that they would need to do that. And I'm not sure that is a goer really. I'm not sure there would be the appetite for that amongst the Israeli public. But for the moment, the Israelis are suggesting that they're prepared to push in further into Lebanon, and I do think while Israel will be keen to go along with the Americans in terms of what's happening in Iran, I think when America says it's stopping in Iran, Israel will stop too. I think in Lebanon it's different. I think there Israel would be prepared to sort of go it alone with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and just with the kind of American tacit support which it has always had, of course.
For President Trump, it's a big worry that Americans might get more and more disaffected because he was elected on a pledge of no more forever wars. But there are analysts who say that for Benjamin Netanyahu, it actually suits him for this war to go on longer because he thinks it could help his hopes of re-election. Right now, he's not that popular, despite the war itself being popular with a majority of Israelis, given the security failures that led to the October the 7th attacks.
Israel is a very divided country, and there are many, many people who have a lot of things that they are unhappy with Prime Minister Netanyahu about. The war in Gaza, how that was conducted, the fact it took so long to get the hostages out, the damage to the economy here, the sort of undermining of Israel's judiciary. However, I think on the issue of Iran, on this war, I was just looking at one of the most respected polling organisations here, and it said 74% of Jewish Israelis strongly support the operation in Iran, and another 14%, I think it was, support it to some extent. So, he does have broad support. I have obviously, over the past 2 weeks, been asking Israelis, do they back Prime Minister Netanyahu? And they do. They agree with him, I think, that Iran poses this existential threat and would have to be dealt with at some time. Now, if the war goes on longer, if we see more Israeli casualties, if we see it beginning to have an impact on the economy here in Israel, if there's no sign of regime change coming in Iran, well, the popularity for the war could shift. But certainly I think in the short term, Prime Minister Netanyahu will have got a boost, and we are going to have elections here in Israel. Some people think as soon as June. They've got to happen, I think, by the autumn. So, in the short term, wars usually give Prime Minister Netanyahu a boost.
Thanks, John. The BBC's John Donnison in Jerusalem. If you like this episode, please subscribe to us here on YouTube. If there are any other stories you'd like us to cover, leave a comment below. And for more international news, you can always download our Global News podcast.